sun is racing.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the Rubbin' is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. As you can tell, I'm rolling solo this week, but it's all right. I've got all your info for the Auto Club 400 from this week's race at Fontana, California. This is a 2-mile track, so less laps to gain points for lap leaders and for fastest laps. Stages in Cali this weekend will be at lap 60, lap 120, and then they'll race the final 80 laps all the way to the finish. Fun fact here, in the last 4 races, there have been 4 different winners, 3 of which went 1-1 on the pole. I don't think that's going to happen this week with Austin Dillon, as Austin Dillon is sitting on the pole because none of the drivers managed to clock a time in the final round of qualifying. That's right, they all sat on pit road waiting because nobody wanted to be the first car out, and instead all 12 cars in the final heat decided not to clock a time. That was wonderful and super exciting. I'm really excited for all the fans that were in attendance that didn't get to see an actual qualifying race. So anyways, with that said, weather should be in the 80s and sunny with way less wind than it has been all weekend, as wind has been a problem for the teams during practices and during qualifying when we go racing at 3:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Sunday, on Fox. Remember, guys, you can now support the Rubbin' is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show on PayPal at rubbinisracingdfs@gmail.com. Liehr and I wanted to thank those of you who have already shown your support for the show. It warms our hearts to see that so many of you guys want to be involved and want to help support the product that we put out every week. With that said, since I'm a man down, and since every time I try to do Liehr's Burning Rubber Baby, it turns out to be a complete and absolute dumpster fire, I'm going to forego the Burning Rubber Baby, save us all from that, and what I'm going to do instead is ask each of you out there to envision Liehr giving you the best Burning Rubber Baby he's ever given. I'm even going to give you a couple seconds to envision that. Got it? All right, so now that we've got that out of our systems, let's get to this week's plays. The favorite plays that I'm reading this week are the big 3 as usual. You've got Truex, who got a big price reduction to $10K. He got blocked by traffic during qualifying and will start 27th, making him the place differential darling of this week's race. You then have Kyle Rowdy Busch at 12,600 starting 4th, and Kevin Harvick, who's starting 2nd, who are the Vegas favorites to dominate this race. Pairing either of them with Truex leaves you 6,600 per player remaining if you go Harvick Truex, and 6,475 if you go the Rowdy Truex. By the way, a lot of people right now are talking about how they're off of Harvick because he was showing times that were not the fastest in practice. The issue here for me is that 2 of his teammates were in the top 6 in 20-lap averages, so that team is fast as a whole. I think he can get that car dialed in. And with a lot of people saying that they're off of Harvick because of those times, I think that's going to decrease ownership on Harvick. This may be a unique opportunity for you to get one of the best drivers in NASCAR at a low ownership percentage this week. That intrigues me quite a bit, even with his slow times. Especially if I was doing a lot of roster builds, I'd really be interested in pairing Harvick with a lot of these different place differential combos that I'm about to talk about. The real issue that you have when you're building lineups this week is that because there are so many intriguing plays, it really does a number on your salary. And that's before we calculate in that Team Penske once again has been showing the best speed throughout, with Blaney and Keselowski topping the 10-lap average charts right behind Daniel Hemrick. Blaney's starting 10th and Keselowski is starting 13th, and their teammate Joey Logano starts 5th. Joey led the 20-lap average chart out of happy hour practice, with both of his other teammates in tow, finishing 2nd and 3rd in those 20-lap averages. And we know that the longer the runs here are important, that we show that you're not falling off on speed. I like all of Team Penske. I really like Keselowski, and I really like Blaney a lot more than I like Logano this week, just because they give me better place differential, and they look like they were the faster cars on track. Like, yes, Logano was top of 20-lap averages, but I just think Blaney and Keselowski are faster. All of that is like what I would classify as my potential dominators. There's one other possibility, and I'll talk about that guy coming up. But the rest of these guys that you're worried about are place differential plays. The first of which is Kyle Larson, who's starting 15th this week, which no one will likely play as his times were slow, and he's 10,800 this week. The weird part about Larson is he actually grades out as one of the best drivers on this track over the last handful of races here, grading out second. I think that this week, if you want to make yourself different, you can try to get on Larson, but it super makes things tight, especially if you're playing Truex with one of the main dominators. If you're leaving Harvick and Rowdy off your lineups, Larson's still a place to look for to swerve, in my opinion. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him. The next play I have for you is Kurt Busch starting 21st. He's 9,100. I really like what he's doing. His speeds were off a little bit, but this team has finished well every race this season and have shown that they can make the adjustments in race. I really like what Kurt Busch has been doing, and that surprises me because I didn't think he was going to have the best of season this year. He's $9,100 and a decent play, but you see what I'm talking about. A lot of these place differential guys are expensive. You then have Eric Jones, who grades out as another one of the good drivers on this track. He's a top 5 grade, and even though he has limited experience running here, he's starting 18th and is 8,200. You then have Suarez starting 20th, who's 8K. You have Bowman, who we also love, who was also showing that he was super fast this weekend, starting 23rd, and he's 7,000, with his teammate Byron $100 cheaper, but starting a spot ahead of him, therefore losing you a little bit of place differential goodness. But both of those cars were practicing in the tops of the 10-lap average charts. They make really interesting plays this week. I really like both of them, plus the place differential. You're really going after place differential with those plays. But when you start rostering those guys, as I've said earlier, you're already, all of these guys that we're talking about are above that salary mark once you roster Truex and a Dominator. It creates a lot of problems. So we already had one of the fans of the video ask us this week whether or not we thought it was a studs-duds approach to the lineup. I'm not sure it's a studs and duds approach, but you're definitely, in most lineup builds, going to have to buy what we consider a field filler or a quote-unquote dud, as you put out, just because salary demands it, right? You don't have another option. And once again, that's before we finish out rounding out another potential dominator / place differential guy, and that is Daniel Hemrick this week at 6,300. He was top of the 10-lap average chart during happy hour, and he's been fast all weekend, and he starts 17th. I think depending on what you expect out of this guy, this is a great salary relief play and a possible place differential, or even just a hold to 17th, and he'll pay off his $6,300 salary. If he moves up at all, it's a great buy for you. And now another racer that I forgot to mention that I think that everybody needs to be aware of this week is that of Paul Menard. He's 6,700 and starts 25th. The guy hasn't had a single non-teens finish since Daytona. If you take his worst teens finish, he's going to get you positive 8 place differential points. His better ones are getting you 13 plus. He has great track history here. Menard is another one of these plays. But once again, all of the plays that I've listed off, other than Hemrick, are above that salary line once you start putting Truex and his stud together. So things get really tight, and there are a lot of options. And a lot of people are going to end up leaving off either Truex for his amazing place differential potential, or they're going to leave off one of the two studs that could end up dominating this race. With that said, guys, a lot of the field filler guys, I don't have specific ones that I like over others. It's all a lot of sketch plays back there. And with that said, I want to give a shout out to the winner of last week's contest in the season-long league. It was Mojo814 with a score of 397.75. He had that awesome Busch-Blaney combo with Larson and Boyer and two back-of-the-pack guys to take it down. It was a great lineup. It was a lineup that scored enough points that it would have taken down a lot of contests or been extremely competitive in it. great job, man. I hope you won some good money last week. And with that said, guys, we want to thank you all, as always, for tuning in. Remember to like, share, subscribe. I know when I go solo, I plow through the information. That's because I don't have anybody to argue with and anybody to throw the ideas off of. So hopefully I got most of the information out there that you guys wanted and that you'll need for this weekend to be successful in your lineup builds. With that said, guys, thanks again, as always, for tuning in. Remember, you can support the show on PayPal. And if I'm not winning any money or Liehr's not winning any money, we really hope it's one of you guys. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye, y'all.